Bonjour, and welcome to the Red Lake Nation College Gikendaasowin Podcast. Join us each week for discussion on topics including culture and language, career exploration, RLNC student spotlights, student projects, and other RLNC services. This week, RLNC's Director of Sponsored Programs, Dr. Wendy Greenberg, interviews RLNC student Amos Weise about his life experiences. Red Lake Nation College would like to thank the National Endowment for the Humanities for their generous support in the creation of this podcast. Miigwech.
Well, this is Wendy Greenberg, and I'm here today to interview Mr. Amos Weise at Red Lake Nation College on September 6th, 2019. Welcome, Amos. Bonjour. Thank you so much for agreeing to do this interview. Can you please introduce yourself?
Bonjour. Amos Weise, Gikendaasowin. Anaquad, Indigo. Makwa, Ndurum. Pamichikumag. Indunjaba. And I was born here in Red Lake. I'm a Red Lake enrollee, born in 1954.
All right. Tell us about your early childhood. Where'd you grow up? Who was in your family?
I was born here in 1954. My father died and got killed in 1958. My mother was from White Earth Reservation, so she took us to White Earth. And something happened. She was diagnosed with TB, and we ended up in foster homes. And when we ended up in German foster homes, so I ended up learning first my Ojibwe, and then English, English, and then also Lower German.
Wow. What was it like to live in a foster home there?
I had my younger brother, so I had to be strong for him. He was younger than I, so he didn't understand the whole process, and I pretty much had to be the support for him also. And I used to wonder why I was there, and when are my people gonna come get me? How come nobody wants me? I went through a range of emotions back then, and I was in foster homes for the next, I would say the next 12, 13 years.
Wow.
And many foster homes. We were taken out of many foster homes because of abuse issues, and I always questioned that because they were supposed to be real Christian foster homes.
Indeed. Do you have other siblings besides your younger brother?
There were 6 of us born alive, 2 that were stillborn. So the older siblings went to different foster homes, and me and my younger brother were the only 2 that stayed together in a foster home. Well, I suppose they needed me to take care of him, so to speak.
Wow. And then at some point you were with your mother for a little bit again?
Yes, in 1971, in July, I ran away from the foster home. I ran 22 miles to the town of Monoman, and they knew my mother lived in Nadawa, and then I went to the social service agency, and they eventually relented and let me go to my mother, and I was with my mother from the July till she passed in November of 71, and then I was a senior in high school. I was 17, and from there
That's okay.
Okay. And that was a rough time in my life also, because my sister took us in New Mexico, and I ended up graduating from high school in Laguna, Acoma in New Mexico in 1972 when I was 17.
New Mexico.
Yes.
Ah, did you stay there for very long? Or?
I was there from that November until I believe it was August. I came back, and then in August I signed up for welding class at Detroit Lakes Vocational Technical School. So I was at Detroit Lakes for that year for welding.
Ah, okay. Did you do any welding after that?
I did. I had one job where I was welding farm machinery equipment.
Huh, okay.
And that didn't last very long because I had chemical addiction issues.
I see. So in general, after you graduated high school, what are some of the things you and your siblings were doing?
Yeah. I never got to know my brothers and sisters very well. We were discouraged from seeing each other. Like if we go to St. Joseph's Catholic Church, the people I stayed with called to make sure the people that had my older brothers or sisters weren't in church at the same mass. They had an 8 o'clock mass and a 10 o'clock mass. So we were discouraged from seeing each other.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, it was a bad situation. There were a lot of emotional abuse.
Sounds like it. Wow. At some point, you started working as an EMT, right?
Yes, and I got in a car accident it all started. There was a car accident I seen when I was at my brother's place. There was a curve in a gravel road, and these people were coming around the curve, and they rolled over, going too fast. And when we went running down there, one of the guys was laying there, and he had blood spurting from his neck. Every time his heart beat, there would blood spurt out. And then I had to put a patch on it, and then keep the blood from spurting. Anyway, they said I saved his life. And then after that, I went enrolled in the EMT course. That was in 1981. And then I passed the EMT, and then whatever the EMT department wouldn't pay for, I joined the fire department. So the fire department would pay for workshops and seminars that I could go to. So I was a EMT fireman for 10 years till 1991. And I moved out of the community because I couldn't make a living. And during that time, I was going to Moorhead State, and I came out of Moorhead State with a 3.8 grade point average, 2 years, driving back and forth from White Earth Reservation. And then I ended up in...
Tell us about when you met Jim Iron Legweaver, and how did that affect you?
Back in 1982, I was... I sobered up, so to speak, in 1979. 1982, I became more interested and curious about my Native American heritage because I had missed out on that growing up in German foster home. So I sort of met Jim Weaver, and I sort of conveyed my interest to him. So he took me out in fasting and sweating and everything, and I did that most of the summer. And he would teach me different things, and he was making pipes, and I learned a lot from him.
So that was your first time doing a sweat then?
Right, it was.
Wow.
And it was 3 days, 3 nights, and about 20 years later, we went back into that field and our sweat lodge was still standing.
Nice.
20 years later.
All right. Tell us about your children. How many do you have? Tell us.
I have 5 kids, and I was proud of the fact that I had to pay child support for all of them throughout the years of my working life, and that was why I ended up quitting college at Bemidji State. I was in Native Americans into Medicine program, but I ended up quitting because my child support was catching up to me, so I had to get a job. So I was proud that I wasn't a deadbeat father
Good.
or deadbeat parent.
So when did you start working at Mystic Lake? And tell us about that.
And up to, in July of 1994, I decided I better get a easier job, because I had been working different jobs like bridge construction, and they're very physically manual labor jobs. So I thought I better get an easier job. I went and applied at the casino, and they said, oh, they have openings for blackjack dealers. So I took a blackjack dealer course at American Indian OIC in Minneapolis, and it was 100 some hours of training. So I got into Mystic Lake Blackjack Department in October 10, 1994, and I was there for 22 years. I started out as a blackjack dealer, ended up as floor supervisor, and then toward the end of my employment there, I knew I wanted to retire at 62. So my last year or two, I said, I don't want to deal in high stakes anymore. I don't want to floor supervise. Just let me deal cards on the main floor. And then that was my exit strategy. And during that time, I managed to put my savings into a 401 plan. So I knew I had enough money to buy, property once I retired.
Great. And I understand you met some interesting people in your long years at Mystic Lake.
I met a lot of celebrities. I can't name them all, but the most interesting one that I had become friends with was Walter Payton, number 34, Chicago Bears, Sweetness. And he was coming up for chemotherapy treatments at Mayo Clinic in Rochester, but he would come up to Mystic Lake to play blackjack, and he always sought me out. Him and I were, I thought, very close friends, even though it was a different type of relationship where, I was the employee of Mystic and he was a guest.
Right.
And other celebrities, I wasn't at liberty to disclose because they want to keep their anonymity. So I just leave it at that. But Walt Payton had passed, so I can say about him.
Yeah. Why do you think the celebrities like to come interact with you at Mystic Lake?
Well, it's like I was at a coffee shop in St. Paul, and I was just sitting there, and I was the only one at the coffee bar. And who should walk in? Carl Eller. And he comes over and hey, how you doing? And he puts his big bear paw in my small hand. And he sat down and they just want anonymity, and they like to converse in just a normal fashion with people. They don't want their celebrity status known all over the place where we are sitting. So I got to know him pretty well. And then years later, my partner, Robin, met him when she was working at Menards. She said he's a really nice guy. I said, oh yeah. I go different places, and I'd see Mayor of Minneapolis. Oh, Archie Ryback. Hi, Amos. And we were on first name basis and everything. And Jesse Ventura, and when Peggy Flanagan came to the college, she come over and gave me a great big hug, and everybody was looking at me. That was funny. And then when Rihanna Yahtzee come up here with her play, of all the people in the audience, she's doing her monologue up on the stage. She said, "Hey, is that you, Amos?" I was really tickled that she would recognize me in such a manner.
Fun. Well, after you finished at Mystic Lake, why did you decide to move up north?
Okay, because I wanted to go back to the homeland. I thought maybe somehow I could make a contribution. when I retired at 62, I decided I want to make something. I want to do something. I want to get that college degree I never got because I dropped out of college to take care of child support issues and such. And then I paid up all my student loans and everything. So I've always tried to be a responsible, and I had hoped that I had gained respect since I had quit drinking in my my middle 20s. So I wanted to make a contribution to my Red Lake Reservation here, and probably even to my mother's reservation, the White Earth Reservation.
All right. So that was why you decided to come to Red Lake Nation College as a student?
Well, I knew Red Lake Nation had started a college, and I had always thought, gee, if I go back to college, I'm going to go to Red Lake. I want to make a contribution. I knew Red Lake College was in the process of accreditation. So I wanted to come up here, and I wanted to be not only a number, but I wanted to be one of the outstanding students. And so far, I've been making the dean's list every semester. So
All right.
I'm trying.
You're doing great. All right. What else? Well, I understand you're also a hereditary chief, and tell us about your great-great-grandfather and ancestry that leads to that.
Yes, my great-great-grandfather was Weise. It has been said through oral history and also interviewing my relatives. I had always known that I was a hereditary chief. I was always told that. I had never researched it until I got here in Red Lake Nation College and used some of their, their resources. And I talked to Kate Ferris over he's supposedly one of the Red Lake archivists. And then I got to know Monty Hammett and Dolores, and Monty was, lend me assistance wherever I needed. And then Weise was supposedly had been one of the 22 hereditary chiefs coming into Minnesota. He was the chief of all Pembina bands in Minnesota, and which included Red Lake. And when Governor Ramsey came up to Red Lake to sign the Oak Crossing Treaty, and then he brought along his military might, he had cannons and Hotchkiss guns surrounding the vicinity of the treaty area. And so they were signed under duress. And when my grandfather would not sign any agreements with the United States government, I think it's been said that Alexander Ramsey had his military run my grandfather and Little Shell and other hereditary chiefs out of Minnesota because they handpicked 7 chiefs for the Red Lake band. Well, it was very turbulent times when they were trying to colonize the Red Lake Reservation even, and wanted Red Lake to give up their lands all the way into Fargo and Grand Forks and all the way into Pembina, North Dakota, where the Pembina Indians lived. Well, so my grandfather ran to Canada, and when they come back into the States, Little Shell stayed in Fort Totten and over in Pembina, North Dakota. Little Shell stayed there and organized his people and organized a reservation over there. And my grandfather came to White Earth. In 1874, he was given Pembina Township in White Earth, within White Earth Reservation boundaries. Pembina Township now incorporates the town of Mahnomen, Minnesota, and all along Highway 59 there. And that treaty has never been resolved. And when they ran, then the United States government reneged on that treaty, and then Weise got himself enrolled in White Earth, him and his band of followers. And then he was number 45 on the list of first people on the 1867 list in White Earth. And He had gotten an allotment over there also, and he had 450 followers. And when he also had Métis following him, about 1,500 of them. And White Earth also, the United States government was formulating White Earth. I don't think the people had too much to say in the formulation of the Constitution or anything else at the time. It was all a time when Native Americans didn't understand English very well. It's like present day, if somebody gave us a contract written in Greek, here, sign this. And then, oh, you don't know how to sign your name? Just here, I'll help you put an X on your paper. You signed it. That was pretty much how treaties were ratified with the United States. Anyway, Sheshe questioned why 1,500 Métis at the same time would have the same vote as his full-blood him and his full-blood followers in White Earth. And there was a 1897 photo of Sheshe Wikishik, and he was given the name John Weise, and they spelled it Wesee. And in other documents, I had found where they had first used the name Weise, and did official documents where they were paying annuities to American Indians, and at that time, a lot of them, annuities were just like minimal, $16 or something. But that may have been some kind of money back in those days. But when they sold land or something, and they were given $1 an acre, that was not very equitable, and is today in today's standards, that would not go very far.
Right. Is there also some connection to Turtle Mountain?
Yes, that's where the Turtle Mountain people, especially when Little Shaw was up there, they were making agreements with the Sioux. And then the Sioux, at the time, it was said in different documents that they were warring parties of Sioux and warring parties of the Pemina, and then they started making treaties to establish peace between the Ojibwe Peminas and the Sioux. And one of the Sioux was Chief Sitting Bull, and I have read documentation where Chief Sitting Bull and Sheshe Wikishka were about the same age at the time. They were born in 1830, 1831 respectively, and it was said even in some documentation that Sitting Bull's mother may have been Pemina Indian. And so my grandfather knew Sitting Bull, and they made those agreements, and there was nothing written at the time, but they had a system of writing called syllabic. And then a lot of it was incorporated into beadwork and different belts called wampum belts. And also at the time when the recorded history says the Sioux gave the Chippewas different ceremonial drums, while supposedly Sitting Bull gave the Pemina, my grandfather and them, a big drum. They call it a big drum these days, and they have big drum ceremonies. But what happened to the big drum, we don't know. But that particular wampum, my grandfather Sheshe Wikishik's son came over to White Earth. He dropped the wampum and must have broke it. And I have heard stories where the people killed him for it and buried him out in the woods, apart from other people in the cemetery where it is located in Nadawash, Minnesota now.
Wow.
So a lot of history. I'm still researching. It's an ongoing project, and I was glad that I was able to put it on a flash drive or jump drive for Lucas Brackfall's class.
And for your own children.
Yes, I will have something to hand down to them. And, I'm also buying that land, so I'll have land to give them also, which I'm very proud of.
Great. So what are your plans going forward for the future? Hopefully finish up at Red Lake Nation College and then what?
I plan on finishing here at Red Lake Nation College in fall semester of 2020. And from there, I'll probably enroll in BSU. But I want to get into into business classes, or either business administration or business management, and eventually take that tribal governance course offered through University of Minnesota Duluth, and which I understand can be an online course.
Now that you're good at computers?
So that was one of my greatest challenges here, still is. It's an ongoing struggle. The struggle is real. Anyway, that's one of those things that I have to buckle down and become proficient at, and I'm always working on it. In fact, I have to review in Word, and I have to review on PowerPoint, and I bought the applications from Microsoft. I have it on my computer at home, so I'm always trying to mess with stuff and see how this works and that. And then I always go to YouTube videos to figure out things that I can't. I have other different resources. I got a Computers for Dummies book. Those are the kind of books I read. It says they're yellow and it says for dummies. I don't know. It's just an ongoing joke.
Yeah, but you're doing great.
We're humorous people.
Yes. And I understand you have some interest in, windmills and steam engines?
Yes, I've also been very interested in steam engines because I had been to a steam thrashing. It was a little festival out in the country one time. And I've always been interested in little steam engines. And I always envisioned, what if I should make a small steam engine and use the wheel on the side to generate electricity, use the steam and pump it into the house for heat, and then either use wood and it would be in a shed separate from the house, so you don't have to worry about it. And, I know steam, if you don't have the correct valves, it could blow up or something. I don't want to make it too close to the house where it would damage things. So, those are some of the things that I have interest in. I had interest in windmills, but I think this steam generation thing would go over better because windmills are like solar. They're not always producing electricity. So the steam engine you could, and then if you use, instead of wood, use propane to heat the boiler. So I've become more interested in that.
All right. Well, and all the experiences you've had in your life, do you have any advice for young people today?
I think I have always led by example. I want to leave a legacy where people will say, oh, is that what Amos used to do that? He went to school when he started back in school when he was in his 60s and he graduated. Why can't we do this? And I have nieces and nephews now that are graduating from college, and I have relatives that will say, oh, Amos, you showed us the way. We overcome our chemical dependency addictions, and we see that education is a path to a better life. And I am very proud of my nieces and nephews that are graduating. I have nephews that are in fire departments, and one of them said, oh, Amos, I want to take that EMT course. And he said, you blazed the trail for us. And I'm very proud of that. And also very proud of my nephew, who's president of his tribe up in Alaska.
Wow.
So, yes.
All right. Anything else you wanted to say today? Talk about?
That should about sum it up. I don't like to talk. about myself too much.
Well, Chi Miigwech, Amos, thank you so much for participating in this interview today.
You are very welcome. I am very honored to have this podcast done and make a contribution, and I would be very honored if the Red Lake Nation College would use it in their efforts to enroll more students, and say the students will say, "Oh, Amos can do it. We can too."
All right, meet you.
Meet you.
We hope you enjoyed this week's episode. Be sure to join us next week as we shine a spotlight on one of our top students, Mitchell Johnson. Miigwech, and have a good day. A Chi Miigwech to the following for their efforts in the creation of this Red Lake Nation College Gikendaasowin Podcast episode. Opening and closing music by Director of Equity, Cultural Education, and Archives, Floyd Buck Jordan. Opening introduction, closing preview, and production by Innovation Center Coordinator Brandon Spears. Our host this episode, Director of Sponsored Programs and RLNC Instructor Dr. Wendy Greenberg. Our guest speaker this episode, RLNC student Amos Weise. And the National Endowment for the Humanities for their generous support. Miigwech, and have a good day.